Hello and welcome to this making of. The reason why I'm doing this video is because I had a couple of people on Instagram and on Reddit asking me what was the workflow, what was the process behind this image, as you can see here, and also the animation. So hopefully this video will explain the tools that I used, how I use them, and the reason why I'm using them, both for professional projects and also personal projects. This was a personal project. And I think also like this kind of videos is just for me as well, having like a library of things that I do and the workflow and the techniques that I used. Because down the line, sometimes you just tend to forget like what you did because you don't do this on a daily basis. So hopefully this will be practical and useful. So let me know in the comments if you find something that you want me to cover more in depth. Okay, so this image here started with something that I saw on the Arnold Slack channel. And Matt, a very talented artist, he created this OSL shader. And basically what this OSL shader does, as you can see, it just creates or mimics the ripples that you get when it's raining, basically. Looking at this, it really inspired me to do something really cool, right? So what I did, I just very quickly jumped to 3dsMax and I created something like this, as you can see here. Sorry, this one. So this took me about an hour just to get like the assets, getting the textures, just playing with the ripples, see which settings were the best. And I think this was like the initial stage of me just trying to understand where I could go with this tool, right? This really helped me, and I think this is something I would recommend to you, just to when you have something in your mind, just quickly create a mock-up scene, something as a proof of concept that will then can be refined, and that's what happened, right? So after applying this, my next stage was getting a good reference, and with that I found something like this that I use as a reference. And a reference, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to copy the image, like every single aspect of the image, but it's something that helps you to see how the camera is capturing reality and how you can translate that into 3D. So I use this image mostly as a way just to see how the water would reflect, for example, the trees, how the leaves would look like with different depths. In terms of color and mood, not necessarily. I think something I would go that because it's too saturated, but it gives me a nice contrast between the dead leaves and the red ones, and I like the aspect ratio as well. So with that in mind, what I did, I jumped back to StudioMax and I started working. And the things I wanted to do is just creating that stage of pre-production. So in pre-production, what I need the assets that I'm going to use, I need the materials, and then that helps me on the next stage, which is the production stage, in terms of getting things done. So on this stage of the pre-production is basically where I'm going to gather all the elements I need to start creating, this image. In this situation here, one of the things I did was creating a very simple plane. I then connected the OSL Rain node to the bump map, and because I'm using OSL, then I can see it on a viewport. And this is one of the cool things, is because I didn't need to render this to see how it looked like and to tweaking the settings. If I go to my time configuration, I'm using 24 frames per second. I have the real-time option ticked. And then if I click here, I can see how this would look like on if I was rendering. So this stage here allowed me to very quickly just tweak the settings and select what I needed. Then the next stage was me going back to my original scene and start refining. So basically what I needed was, the main thing was the OSL node, obviously, but then I needed a plane for the water, I need something for to be the bottom, and then I needed a couple of trees and also leaves, right? In terms of trees, I just used some that I had on my library. Basically, I just use the same tree, then I scale up, and it looks like a mess seen from this point of view. But if I select my camera and if I started rendering, the reason why I look like this is because I was moving the tree around just to get the right reflection that I wanted. And this is something that I would advise you, like if you're going to try to make this look as realistic as possible and just putting trees what they are supposed to be, you may get something good, but here you have a more like a final control over your, or your process. So this is the reason why I did that. Then, although I like to use layers, another thing I like to do is just creating a dummy, and this allows me to control everything. Then the next stage was getting a couple of textures. I did that for the bottom. I also had a plane here just to block some of the lighting. Again, just refining the scene slowly. And for all of this, I use Arnold GPU. It gives me a fast preview, and most of the times I tend to use the Arnold GPU when I'm doing look development. Right? It gives me a fast interaction. It gives me a fast feedback and allow me to make to make decisions very easily. Then the next stage was doing the leaves. Now for that we're going to jump to Houdini. So why Houdini? Well, I was using Megascans, and this is the texture that I have now. I could go to StudioMax and I could start applying this to the plane, add a lot of geometry, and then selecting the leaf and use that. But I have to admit I'm quite lazy, and there is no way I'm going to spend a couple of hours trying to do this. There is a way to do this in Max, but I don't think it gives you the best results. And then people, when they think about Houdini, they tend to think it's something really complex. The way I see it, I look at Houdini as a toolbox, and I try to complement the work that I do with Max with the tools I have available in Houdini. And if there is something which is way easier to do with Houdini, I'll just use Houdini. It just makes sense to use the best tool for the project that you're working on. Now, what I'll do, I'll just quickly exemplify how you can use Houdini, even the free version, right? You can use it. And I'll show you the process of picking that image and just creating a couple of leaves, right? Okay, so you select this window called Objects. You press the Tab button to open the tab menu, and then you click on Geometry, right? So you tap Geometry because you want to work with geometry. This is the node where you're going to work. So double click to open, and then the node that we need is called Trace, right? So again, tab menu, type Trace. So this node, what it does, it just basically opens an image. It has to be a black and white image, and use the contrast between the black and white to trace your geometry. So if you select the node trace, you have this option here called image input. This is where you load your image. So to the right, you have this icon to open the floating file chooser. Right, I'm already on my folder. And then if I scroll down, I don't need the albedo. What I need is the opacity. Right? So double click to open. And as you can see, automatically you have your leaves. It's amazing how quick it is. However, one thing I want to point out is the fact that if I click this option here to see the points, there is a lot of points to create this. And this is way too much for what I need. And it's going to create a very heavy geometry. So what I need to do, I need to resample. The same way you do the resampling in StudioMax, where you normalize the spline, you can do the same thing inside Houdini. So what I'll do, again, tab menu, type resample, and then you drop the nodes, and to connect these nodes, you have this circle here, and then you click and drag, and it connects. Now, if you want to see what this node is doing, again, you need to click on this icon here to view on the viewport. So as you can see, this is automatically resampling the values, and what it's doing, as you can see from the length, it's giving a space of 0.1. Now, 0.1 is definitely too big. Even if I go to something like 0.01, still I'm losing some detail. And you can see, you can compare these two ways. You can click here to see it, or you can click this icon here to bypass. So if you bypass, you can see how it looks. So definitely I need to go a little bit lower in terms of values. So something like maybe 0.25. I think it gives me a nice balance between before and after, definitely. So I don't lose much geometry. Okay, so far so good, but I need more than just a flat plane. I need to add some geometry here. For that, I have a node called remesh. So if I select this node, remesh, it's asking me, it needs some geometry to divide. So what I can do, I can connect this here. And again, the same principle. If you want to see what this node is doing, you just select the viewport. Now, as you can see, it's adding some geometry, definitely, but I need to control this a little bit better. So what I can do, I can use the element sizing to start adding a little bit more geometry. I can also use the interactions to create more interactions between, you know, the different elements inside this. So again, if I increase something like 9, I still need to go a little bit lower, okay? So yeah, something like this. If you go a little bit, you know, too much, it'll be cooking, as you can see in the information here. And what you can do, you can press the escape key just to stop it, and you'll get something like this, which tell you like something went wrong with this node. But the easy way to fix it, just go back to a normal value, and you'll be back in business. So something like 0.2, perhaps a little bit lower. And then if I go again to interactions, you can see what the interactions are doing, right? It just one, this here gives more like a smooth surface, like it's more divide the geometry. Now that I have my geometry, the next thing that I need is definitely some UVs. And to show you that, I'm just going to use a node called UV Quick Shading. And if you connect this node to the remesh, again, you have the option to open a texture map. This is what you can do. Click here, and this time we're going to select the albedo. Now, if I view the quick shades, as you can see, I just have nothing here because I don't have any UVs. So I need to create those UVs. And the way I can create UVs in this case, a really easy way, is just by using the UV project. Similar way you do in 3dsMax, where you can just project UVs into a flat surface. And that's how it works. You can literally do that. And then once you do the UV project, you can delete this connection here and connect it to this one. Go back to your UV shading. As you can see, now I have proper UVs. Now I can see that it's correctly assigned to each surface. And the reason why I want to do something like this is because then I just need one material to control all of these leaves, right? And this is something really practical in terms of workflow. I don't need to create like a lot of materials for every single leaf, or just create a very complex system where I have like a switcher based on material IDs. Using one material, I just can control all of them. Okay, so the final step is definitely just exporting this. Now, because we're using the free version, we can export as Alembic files. This is usually what I do. I highly recommend, you know, everyone to use Alembic files. The big reasons because they can work as proxies, but at the same time allows you to, you know, change the geometry. You can apply modifiers on top of it. You can apply edit poly. You can do a lot of stuff with Alembic files. But that's not a big issue because I can export these as OBJs. Okay, so if again I click the tab menu and I start typing ROP, ROP, and then I select the option called geometry output, and this you connect it, and this what it does. It allows you to output a file. Okay, so again the same principle. Just click here to open a place to save it. Let's say I want to save it here. So the way it works, you give a name. So for example, I'm going to call leaf, and then I have to dot. You have to specify what you're trying to save because the geometry allows you to save a lot of file formats. So just do obj, click accept, and then to save it, what you can do is just click save to disk. So this saved my file as an obj file. And then what you can do is just save this as a template. So the next time you need to do something, so for example, I can exemplify that. If I need to trace another file, I can use the same principle. Can go here, select this one, there you go. Obviously the UVs are wrong, but I automatically have another leaf. And that's the beauty of using Houdini, is because the way it works in terms of node, it's procedural, and allows you to, once you have a workflow that it suits the way they work, then you can just, recycle this template over and over and over. Okay, so after I exported the file from Houdini, the next step was obviously importing into 3dsMax. And as you can see, once you import the OBJ file into 3dsMax, the cool thing is you have a single mesh for every leaf, which makes your life way easier than having to manually go and detach one by one. Then in terms of material, it was even easier. Because we use the UV projection in Houdini, that means I can have just a single material like the one you can see here to control the 16 leaves. This is a way easier way to work than for me, for example, having to assign a different material ID to every single leaf and then use something like this, OSL material ID, connect to a switcher, and then just assign different bitmaps to these inputs. The next step was for me to sketch in these leaves. Now, I did try to use something like Frostback. It wasn't giving what I wanted. So for that reason, I went to Tyflow. Now, in terms of Tyflow, I'm not going to explain in much depth what I've done here because there is way better tutorials out there that explains how to work with Tyflow. Just to give you like a brief idea, I have 3 different planes, and the reason why I have that is because I want 3 different speeds and rotations and spins, creating like a layer of detail. So obviously, like the layer close to the bottom doesn't move so much as comparison, for example, with a layer close to the surface. I did use a collision, so I use a plane to get those leaps and for them to move. And then I did the same thing for the rain. I created the rain the same way. And then once I have this done, I did the render with Arnold GPU. If you're working with Arnold GPU, once you switch from CPU to GPU, you'll see that the samples for diffuse specular transmission are off. And that's because you have to use the adaptive and progressive, or just the adaptive, honestly. And the way it works, you set up the quality, the initial quality with your camera AA, and then you use the AA sample max to clean the noise, right? So once you find the sweet spot, it's time to render. Now, to render, what I did was also exporting a couple of AOVs. Now, in terms of AOVs, and in particular because of the kind of scene I was working with, I didn't need all the AOVs, right? I only needed the specular, direct and indirects, and transmission, direct and indirect. And once this is exported and rendered, the next step was for me to go to Fusion. Okay, so this is Fusion, and I believe that if you are coming from something like Photoshop or After Effects, seeing this, it makes no sense at all. But the way that Fusion works, and for that matter, the way that Nuke works, is by connecting nodes to each other. And when you connect the nodes, you have settings that you can tweak, and you can look at nodes the same way that you can look at layers in Photoshop. The difference is the workflow that you get by using a node system is by far more flexible and allows you to produce better work and in a faster way. And I can give you a very quick example. Right? If I have to update an image from version 2 to version 3, for example, and if I have a lot of masks that I need to update, I'll have to do that manually. I know there is a couple of plugins that kind of like help you with that process, but still, all the process that you did in terms, for example, of exposure, if you convert a layer to a smart object and you apply a chromatic aberration or apply glow, you have to do that again manually. At the same time that you're doing that, all I have to do is literally coming to this option here, script, reloader. The same thing happens with Fusion, by the way. I'll just select what I want to reload. In this case, all my loaders. The loaders is the thing that brings, the image. I'll tell you where is the old file, where is the new one, click OK, and everything is automatically updated. So all the effects, they are going to be updated. All the masks that I have are going to be updated. And literally updating an image, it takes like seconds instead of taking like an hour, for example, or even more if you're working with a higher resolution in Photoshop. Another thing why I love to work with Fusion is because I can use Cryptomatte. Now, Cryptomatte, what it does is something like this. So Cryptomatte, it creates a mask. In this case, for example, is a mask for every single material that I have. You can also create a mask for every single object that you have or for every single asset. Asset works in a different way. And you can create all of those masks automatically. There is no need to create a render passer and then trying to use an RGB mask. You don't have to do that. If you're working with Arnold's or with V-Ray, creating a Cryptomatte is quite easy, and it's basically free for you. The way you work. And here I can give a quick example of how it works. So I have my crypto layer called material, and I have my Cryptomatte. And the way it works is for me to use, at least in Fusion, with Nuke works a little bit different, but it's the same principle. The way it works, I just drag and drop this what I want, and then I add this to my mask. I'm working here with a big image, so it'll take a little bit longer. But then you're not stuck. I mean, you can add more information. So if I want, I can add this one. If I want, I can add another one. And then notice something here. So the material here is called CN Bulk 2, and the other one is CN Bulk 4. This is the name I gave to each of the material. And the beauty of working with the same system like this is the fact that even if my image change, even if, for example, this balcony goes a little bit higher, this one goes a little bit higher, because I'm using the same name for the material, when I update this image, the masks are going to be updated automatically. So that's why I'm saying, when you have a good workflow, when you have a good template like the one I have here, when you have everything set up right from the beginning, updating an image and improving it, it takes literally seconds, right? So that's the reason why I like to do that. Another reason why I like to work with a node system is because you also have a lot of more flexibility if you want to explore a different look. If you want to work, for example, with settings like the glow, the bloom, chromatic aberration. I can give you a quick example here where I have a couple of LED files. Now, if I have to check them, let's say, for example, Photoshop, I have to create a layer for every single one, and then I have to like turn on and off. And it can make it a little bit difficult trying to make a decision when you have to turn them on and off. If I'm working with Fusion, for example, I can work with versions. So very quickly, I can go through all my different versions and see how they are affecting my image, and then I can make a decision. Maybe I like version 5 more, or maybe I like version 1, maybe I like version 4, but if it's too much, then what I can do is just come in here and I can just blend like 50%, for example. So you see, like, again, this is not a tutorial to explain how to work with Fusion, but at least just to give you an idea that this working in this way, it really brings a lot of flexibility to the way you work. And I know that the way that I'm presenting this making of, it's more like a linear process, but actually I go back and forward quite a lot when I'm working with Max and Fusion. So when I'm doing just my initial draft, I come here, I already have this template set up. So if it's a new image, like I said, going to script, reload them, and bring everything inside. If I'm working with a 2K image and then I jump to 4K, you don't have to worry, because the software automatically will scale up everything for you. And then I do my initial tweaks. If I see something that I don't like, I go back to Studio Max, I tweak it, I do another render, and then again, this makes your life so much easier. And that's another reason why I tend to, when I save my image, I don't save with exposure, I don't save with tone mapping, with any color correction, because I'm going to do all of my color correction inside Fusion or inside Nuke. And that's it, basically, the workflow. So there's nothing special on this. I hope that you find somehow useful. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you will be interested in understand a little bit more how a node system works inside Fusion or even Nuke. And definitely it's something I can look into. So again, thank you for watching and take care.